Hello Jujutsu Kaisen fans, I know that you guys are only used to seeing insanely powerful Jujutsu Kaisen characters like Satoru Gojo, and what you're not used to at all is seeing a weak character. But what if there was a character in Jujutsu Kaisen who was undeniably the weakest sorcerer in history? In this video, I'll be creating a character so weak, so hilariously ineffective, that you'd question how they survive in the dangerous world of curses and sorcery. Generally, there are 10 traits in Jujutsu Kaisen universe that make a character truly invincible. Namely, number 1, race. Number 2, curse energy level. Number 3, cursed technique. Number 4, domain expansion. Number 5, hand-to-hand combat skills. Number 6, weapon proficiency. Number 7, curse resistance. Number 8, physical strength. Number 9, intelligence and strategy. And finally, number 10, emotional and psychological traits. Our goal will be to find the worst possible match for each of these traits to truly create a weak character. But before creating our character, I'd like to define one rule of thumb here. I'll only be taking one trait from one character. That means if I'm taking Naname Kento's paper cut curse, I can't use any other trait from him. This rule ensures we get a diverse mix of the weakest possible traits from across the Jujutsu Kaisen universe, creating a truly unique and hilariously ineffective character. Now, let's dive in and assemble the ultimate underdog. So, what race should our character be? In the Jujutsu Kaisen universe, we have multiple races like humans, curses, or cursed spirits. To make our character truly the weakest, we'll go with the most fragile and vulnerable option, which is undoubtedly human. Humans are the weakest among all the races in JJK anime. In a universe where even the weakest curses can be deadly, being a regular human means you're at the bottom of the food chain. It's like bringing a butter knife to a sword fight. Imagine the sheer terror of walking into a room full of curses and realizing your biggest defense is, well, running really fast and hoping for the best. The next trait is the curse energy level. In the Jujutsu Kaisen world, humans can have cursed energy. In fact, all humans do have cursed energy to some extent. We need the worst possible curse energy level for our character. Okay, now there are basically 3 forms of curse energy level. Number 1, immense curse energy. Number 2, moderate curse energy. Or number 3, minimal curse energy. The minimal curse energy level is the weakest of all, therefore, we'll be choosing the minimal curse energy for our character from Mai Zenin, who is relatively low curse energy compared to other sorcerers and relies more on physical combat. Mai Zenin's curse energy level is notably low due to her family's expectations and the Zenin clan's biased standards, which often led her to struggle more than her peers. Despite being part of a prestigious sorcerer family, Mai's limited curse energy forced her to compensate by focusing on physical combat and using her environment creatively. This made her less effective in battles where curse energy is the primary tool for both offense and defense. Now, let's move toward the next trait, which is the cursed technique. The most fragile curse technique is simple domain. This comes from Kasumi Miwa, whose simple domain is very basic and has limited applications in high-level combat. Imagine facing a powerful curse and your best move is a technique that's barely more than a party trick. Simple domain might protect our character from one specific technique, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not doing much to ensure his survival. It's like trying to win a duel with a shield that only blocks rubber arrows. The limitations of Miwa's technique highlight just how outclassed you'd be in serious combat. Alright, let's move towards the next trait, which is domain expansion. Domain expansion is truly a powerful trait. In the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, domain expansions are game changers, providing massive advantages in battle. Even the weakest form of domain expansion can become lethal for the opponent. We can't give such a formidable power to our character, can we? Therefore, to stay true to our theme, we won't give domain expansion power to our character, not even the tiniest amount. Not having one means our character is severely outclassed when facing opponents who can trap him in a deadly domain. This trait comes from Nobara Kujisaki, who does not have any domain expansion. Nobara's lack of a domain expansion showcases a significant gap in power potential, making it the perfect trait for our weakest character. Nobara faced numerous challenges in combat due to this limitation. For instance, during intense battles, Nobara had to rely solely on her resourcefulness and physical prowess, often struggling against opponents who could dominate the battlefield with their domains. Domain expansions create an almost inescapable, lethal environment, putting those without it at a severe disadvantage. Next up, combat skills. When we see JJK characters, some are good at martial arts, some are skilled fighters, and some have hand-to-hand combat skills. The weakest form of combat skill is, of course, hand-to-hand combat skills. Therefore, our character possesses hand-to-hand combat skills. Not just hand-to-hand combat skills, but the poorest form and technique of this skill. This trait is taken from Kiyotaka Ijichi, who is a non-combatant and has poor hand-to-hand combat skills. Ijichi's lack of combat proficiency is a major liability in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe, where physical confrontations with curses are common. His poor hand-to-hand combat skills mean he's virtually defenseless in close quarters combat, making him highly vulnerable to attacks. In scenarios where other characters can hold their own with martial arts or sheer physical strength, Ijichi is forced to rely entirely on others for protection. This trait is perfect for our character. Now let's talk weapon proficiency. Our character, hands down, has no proficiency with weapons at all. What is even worse is that if he takes weapons, he could strike his own friends. This trait is taken from Shoko Leary, who focuses on non-combat roles and has minimal weapon proficiency. In battles where weapons can turn the tide, being unable to wield any effectively leaves our character vulnerable and practically defenseless. Imagine trying to fend off a curse with a weapon you can barely hold correctly. Shoko's expertise in healing rather than fighting shows that not everyone in the Jujutsu Kaisen world is cut out for combat, making her the perfect candidate for this trait. The next trait is curse resistance. Our character will possess low curse resistance just like Junpei Yoshino, who was highly susceptible to being manipulated and affected by curses. Junpei's tragic story underscores the dangers of low curse resistance, making him an ideal inspiration for our weakest character's susceptibility to curses. Next, let's discuss the physical strength of our character. Our character possesses the worst physical strength, like Yuka Ozawa, who is a civilian with no special physical training or enhancements. In a universe where physical prowess can mean the difference between life and death, being physically weak is a major liability. It's like trying to lift weights with wet noodles for arms, useless and laughable. Yuko's ordinary civilian status highlights how out of place you'd be in a combat scenario, making her the perfect inspiration for this trait. Now, we need to consider intelligence and strategy. We're looking for the worst here, so what are our options? First, we have Haruda Shigemo, a curse user whose strategies are often impulsive and poorly thought out. Haruda's reckless and impulsive nature means he often charges into situations without a plan, relying on brute force and luck rather than careful planning. His actions typically lead to chaotic and disastrous outcomes, highlighting the pitfalls of poor strategic thinking. Haruda's lack of foresight and inability to anticipate the consequences of his actions make him a prime candidate for limited intelligence. Next, we have Kokichi Muta, Mikamaru. While Kokichi possesses intelligence, his strategic thinking is hindered by his over-reliance on technology and remote operations. His plans often lack the adaptability required in dynamic combat situations. Although he can devise complex strategies using his puppets, he struggles in direct confrontations where his physical limitations and reliance on pre-planned tactics leave him vulnerable. Kokichi's intelligence is not inherently low, but his strategic inflexibility makes him less effective in unpredictable scenarios. Lastly, there's Jogo, a powerful cursed spirit with a significant ego that clouds his judgment. Jogo's overconfidence often leads him to underestimate his opponents, resulting in poor decision-making and strategic blunders. His arrogance blinds him to potential threats, causing him to make impulsive and reckless choices. While Jogo possesses raw power, his inability to strategize effectively due to his inflated ego makes him a contender for limited intelligence. After considering these options, I'll choose Haruda Shigemo for our character's limited intelligence and poor strategy. Haruda stands out because his impulsive actions consistently lead to catastrophic actions and outcomes, showcasing the severe consequences of lacking strategic foresight. Kokichi Muta, while inflexible, does possess a level of intelligence and planning that Haruda lacks. Jogo, on the other hand, has strategic potential overshadowed by his arrogance, but his raw power and occasional moments of cunning disqualify him from being the worst. Haruda's reckless and poorly thought-out strategies make him the perfect inspiration for this trait in our weakest character, emphasizing the dangers of impulsivity and lack of planning in a world where quick thinking and strategy are crucial for survival. Lastly, let's examine emotional and psychological traits. Our character has to be highly anxious and fearful. This trait comes from one and only Junpei Yoshino, who exhibited significant anxiety and fear during his encounters with curses and manipulation by Mahito. In high-stress situations, being highly anxious and fearful is a recipe for disaster. It's like trying to defuse a bomb with shaky hands. Dangerous and ineffective. So there you have it, the weakest character in Jujutsu Kaisen history. Combining these traits from different characters results in the weakest character imaginable. This character has all the disadvantages and none of the redeeming qualities that make other characters formidable. From paper cuts to soggy socks, this character has it all. If by all you mean completely useless abilities. In a world of powerful sorcerers and deadly curses, sometimes it's fun to imagine the absolute worst case scenario. Stay tuned for our next video where we create the strongest character in Demon Slayer's history. See you next time.